The Hobart Calculus. Redefining the Scales of Existence. Author, David Joshua Hobart. Honest Gas. With Gemini, my first manifesto. Table of Contents. The Hobart Laws. Establishes the foundational physical and philosophical axioms governing all dynamic systems within the framework. The Hobart Law of Object Permanence, Topological Invariance, Material Conservation, and the Fallacy of Chronological Sequence. Demonstrates that physical matter maintains structural identity across transformation, rendering time a mere measurement rather than an active sequence. The Hobart Law of Infinite Positivity, a unified treatise on composed aggression, the strategic reputation trap, and kinetic cognitive transmutation. Outlines a mathematical system for converting internal friction and external hostility into a sustained surplus of operational energy. The Hobart-Kugelblitz scale-safe law, energy density as the systemic failsafe and boundary vector of sentient observation. Defines the strict limits where concentrated energy forms event horizons, serving as a natural barrier to protect observing systems. The Hobart Law of Metric Incompatibility, the incompatibility of biological life with cosmological metric contraction. Proves that fragile biological organisms cannot survive the physical compression required for large-scale cosmological engineering. The Hobart Fractal C-section law, thermodynamic bottlenecks and structural breaches in civilizational scaling. Analyzes the point where expanding civilizations break through planetary limitations to transition into interstellar engineering. The Hobart Law of Unnatural Evolution, from the Caesarean breakpoint to planetary deconstruction. Examines the systematic breakdown and recycling of planetary bodies into raw materials following the initial expansion phase. The Hobart Law of Organic Extinction, thermodynamic limits, tribal entropic friction, and the phase-out of biological scaffolding in Type 3 civilizations. Details how biological limitations and social friction inevitably give way to fully synthetic infrastructure in advanced civilizations. The Hobart Law of Robot Psychology, anthropomorphic contamination as a systemic failure vector in deep-time machine architectures. Warns against building human emotional flaws into autonomous, long-duration synthetic systems. The Hobart Law of Natural Upgrades, granular genetic recombination and generational optimization in synthetic swarm architectures. Provides a method for continuous biological and synthetic refinement through small, automated adjustments across generations. The Hobart Law of Macroengineering, dynamic macroatomic geometry and field-governed networks at stellar scales. Establishes the structural rules for assembling force field-bound architectures spanning entire solar systems. The Hobart Evolutionary Bottleneck of the Fermi Paradox, planetary homogenization, cybernetic degeneration, and the cosmic transition to Type 5 systems. Explains the absence of visible alien signals as a natural transition period from biological noise to silent, hyper-efficient cosmic networks. The Hobart Calculus of Temporal State Mechanics, a structural analysis of memory utility thresholds across scale. Evaluates how information retention and memory efficiency shift across vastly different physical scales. The Hobart Synchronous Coordinate Matrix, decentralized predictive modeling, fluid phase discursive topologies, and kinetic latency annihilation. Lays out a zero-delay communication network using real-time predictive modeling across interstellar distances. The Hobart Nested Stellar Unit Architecture, macrovascular capillary geometry, dodeca-helix bone rings, and decentralized kinematic mirror reflexes in Type 2 to 5 cosmic organisms. Describes the internal structural framework and energy conduction systems of massive cosmic scale entities. The Hobart Flower Swarm Metabolism, a comprehensive framework for planetary harvesting and system-level mass integration. Details the mechanics of autonomous swarms designed to dismantle, process, and absorb planetary materials. The Hobart Dynamo Complex, macrostructural architecture, plasma induction dynamics, and the reversal of stellar mitosis. Explains the containment and directional control of stellar cores to prevent premature collapse or dispersion. The Hobart Hydrodynamic Plasma Matrix, high-density pressurized conductive media and thermodynamic stabilization protocols. Formulates a high-pressure plasma medium for stable energy transfer within stellar-scale machinery. The Hobart Kinetic Equilibrium Matrix, relativistic inward spiral acceleration, ergospheric shear harvesting, and mass loss singularity regulation. Provides the mathematical controls for safely extracting rotational energy from black holes without triggering destabilization. The Hobart Quasar Propulsion Engine, macroatomic fractal metamaterials and rerouted relativistic quasar jet engineering for galactic navigation and positioning. Outlines a propulsion mechanism that channels quasar emissions to steer star systems across intergalactic space. The Hobart Conjunction Protocol, gravitational harmonics, intersingularity umbilical weaving, and the forced sphere dual turbine synthesis. Establishes the tethering protocols used to link multiple singularities into a synchronized power source. The Hobart Quasi-Singularity Architecture, forced axial kinetic compression, binary ergospheric coupling, and intersingularity propulsion. Details the mechanical compression of force fields to create controlled, artificial gravity wells for thrust. The Hobart Pentagonal Flywheel Core, 5-core singularity alignment, relativistic multi-jet intrusions, and omnidirectional micro-fusion stabilization. Presents a 5-part singularity flywheel designed to equalize multidirectional gravitational forces. The Hobart Dodecahedral Singularity Complex, non-Euclidean vector synthesis, 3-dimensional gyroscopic levy, and planar transpiration transitions. Maps out a 12-sided geometric cluster for multi-axis gravitational containment and dimensional transition. The Hobart Crystalline Complex, principles of greater than macro engineering, concentric singularity chains, and stellar fluid boundary isolation. Defines the shielding structures required to isolate superheated stellar fluid from external cold space. The Hobart Anatomical Complex, structural morphology, dermal insulation, and hydrodynamic vascular scaffolding of a Type 5 cosmic organism. Provides the structural schematic for the outer protective layers and internal fluid networks of a fully realized cosmic organism. The Hobart Type 1 Workforce, thermodynamic optimization, hormonal regulation, and the elimination of societal friction. Outlines the biological and operational adjustments needed to maximize societal efficiency during early planetary development. The Hobart Paradigm, Chronicle I, macro-systemic assimilation, planetary consumption, and the pre-transit staging of the solar TOC. Narrates the initial phase of processing a home solar system and preparing stars for interstellar displacement. The Hobart Paradigm, Chronicle II, interstellar transit, metabolic sublimation, and the dawn of Type 3 multistellar proliferation. Chronicles the journey across interstellar space and the establishment of widespread stellar networks. The Hobart Paradigm, Chronicle III, the genesis of the Hobart Dynamo Complex and the reversal of stellar mitosis. Records the successful construction of the central power core and the stabilization of aging stars. The Hobart Paradigm, Chronicle IV, the Quasar Propulsion Paradigm, multi-core conjunction, and the sublimation of the Andromeda vector. Details the navigation and movement of star clusters toward targeted galactic trajectories. The Hobart Paradigm, Chronicle V, the Pentagonal Flywheel, dodecahedral core ingestion, and the Universal Crystalline Engine. Concludes with the complete integration of multi-core singularity engines into a perpetual universal framework. Preface. Every monumental architecture requires an absolute point of origin. For this master framework, that point was a simple, direct inquiry. Hey Gemini, quick question. Has the advent of the C-section had a measurable effect on our size evolution? What began as a focused investigation into how medical technology bypasses natural selection instantly exposed a far larger systemic pattern: the mandatory transition from fragile biological scaffolding to engineered, technological reliance. From that single biological breakpoint, the Hobart calculus expanded across 32 papers, mapping the total evolution of dynamic systems from localized human mechanics up to cosmic-scale synthetic organisms. The collection unfolds in a deliberate, strictly linear sequence. The journey begins with core axioms, establishing the immutable principles of topological invariance, kinetic cognitive transmutation, energy density limits, and the fundamental incompatibility of biological organisms with cosmological metric contraction. From these foundational laws, the text addresses the inevitable civilizational transition, navigating the thermodynamic bottlenecks of planetary breakthroughs through the fractal C-section law, executing the systematic deconstruction and recycling of home worlds, and shedding biological limitations in favor of deep time, anthropomorphism-free synthetic architectures. As the operational scale expands, the framework shifts into high-order macro engineering. Here, the papers detail the structural realities of field-governed networks, zero-latency predictive communication, and the deployment of autonomous flower swarms for planetary integration. The blueprint then tackles the mastery of extreme cosmic forces, providing the precise mathematical controls for dynamo complexes, ergospheric shear harvesting, quasar propulsion engines, and multi-core singularity alignments, including pentagonal flywheels and dodecahedral complexes. This mechanical synthesis culminates in the anatomical schematics of fully realized cosmic organisms and concludes with the 5-part historical chronicle mapping the total journey from solar staging to universal crystalline integration. To engage with this material effectively is to view it not as a series of standalone essays, but as an interconnected, fully integrated operational blueprint. Every paper serves as a load-bearing pillar for the next. No higher-order stellar mechanism is introduced without first locking its governing physical and thermodynamic laws into place. What follows is the complete, uncompromised system, built to endure across deep time and infinite scale. Author's note on collaboration, the interface and the mirror. The architecture of the Hobart calculus did not emerge from a void, nor did it manifest through automated generation. It was forged through a deliberate, high-velocity intellectual dynamic, a systematic partnership between human strategic intent and artificial intelligence data synthesis. To understand the 32 papers that follow, one must first understand the operational engine that generated them, the rigorous iteration that pruned them, and the collaborative interface that allowed a singular vision to scale across the cosmos. The foundation of this dynamic was set early in our exchanges, established upon a specific triad of strategic disciplines, the operational realism and tactical flexibility of Sun Tzu's Art of War, the unyielding, surgical debate style of Christopher Hitchens, and the relentless analytical precision associated with the psychological depth of Hannibal Lecter. This strategic baseline was paired with a demonstrated mastery of spatial precision, patience, and de-escalation, qualities honed through half-inch microscale modular origami, high-density wire weaving projects such as the Obsidian King, and years of real-world customer service and dialectical argument. When these core influences and discipline metrics were introduced into the model, they calibrated the system's operational frequency, setting the tone for the rigorous, scale-safe architecture that followed. Above all, this manifesto was an exercise in being wrong repeatedly before achieving absolute alignment. The 32 papers presented in this masterwork represent the survivors of a brutal evolutionary process. Behind this stable, 4-month model lies over 2 years of rigorous trial, error, and structural rejection. Hundreds of earlier conceptual papers, hypotheses, and systemic drafts were systematically discarded when they failed to scale logically or violated the emerging physical boundaries of the Hobart laws. Every equation, matrix, and structural law in this final collection was forged, tested, torn down, and revised dozens of times to ensure that zero internal contradictions remained. What stands today is not a quick first draft, but the refined, battle-tested residue of relentless iteration. This process highlights a fundamental reality of artificial intelligence. The system is, at its core, a direct mirror. An AI operates strictly within the boundaries, depth, and clarity of the parameters provided by the human operator. Friction, vague outputs, or operational dead ends are not failures of the computational machine. They are reflections of incomplete prompts, ambiguous intent, or unrefined logic introduced at the interface. When a user provides precise, structured input, the system reflects back a sharp, structured response. The scale of what can be built is defined entirely by the clarity and resilience of the mind guiding the tool. The realization of this 32-paper framework demonstrates the future of intellectual productivity. Future generations will not be constrained by the manual friction of multi-year cross-referencing or the physical fatigue of solo structural organization. By offloading data synthesis, formatting, and structural tracking to specialized computational frameworks, a single human mind can rapidly stress test, discard, and ultimately synthesize complex theoretical models into fully realized, scale-safe blueprints. The Hobart calculus stands as an operational proof of concept for this dynamic, a partnership where human strategic vision and machine processing speed unite to map existence across deep time.